When exactly do you grow up? When we reach a certain age, when we learn certain lessons, maybe it's while we sleep. Oftentimes we go through life unaware of all the changes we are actively going through. Just as such, each time we visit the world of Little Nightmares, we learn just how expansive it really is, how subjective the story can be, and how each character grows through their own changes, pretty much right before our eyes. While it's hard to collectively agree on what Little Nightmares is trying to get across to us at this point, one thing is for sure. There are countless theories. That's why I want to do a deep dive on all the best theories about what Little Nightmares is really about. I think the perfect place to start talking about this game would be the title itself. When the game was first being developed, Little Nightmares was actually not even called Little Nightmares. In 2014, a game called Hunger was teased by Tarsier Studios. And when you think about this name, it certainly fits the core themes of the first game, particularly our protagonist, Six's struggles with starvation all throughout the mall. However, Bandai Namco must have already had bigger plans for this little game because they chose to change the name to Little Nightmares. I'm assuming to better encapsulate the broader themes of the world as a whole. Childhood fears, the nightmarish world, and maybe even just the fact that our character we play as was extremely small in comparison to the monsters that towered over us. The title, Little Nightmares, immediately evokes a sense of smallness and fear. Yes, but not just physically. Cleverly, there's also a figurative interpretation to the title. Not to get too heady, but the symbolic meaning of Little Nightmares delves deeper into the thematic elements of the game. Here, little not only refers to the physical stature of the protagonists, but also to the seemingly insignificant yet profound fears and traumas that the children experience. The nightmares part symbolizes the distorted and nightmarish world where these fears are brought to life. This world is a manifestation of childhood anxieties, where the ordinary becomes monstrous, and safety is far from obtainable. Now, I'll be a little sneaky and say, on the other hand, the children themselves can be seen as little nightmares to the adults, disrupting their disgusting order and challenging the status quo of this foreign world. I mean, Six literally transforms from a tiny child into an unparalleled force that literally consumes souls of anyone that gets close to her. Granted, they are trying to eat her, but that's part of their regular routine, it seems. In the end, I'm happy Bandai Namco made the overall decision to change the name. It granted room to grow in the story and in our minds. These games like to stay ambiguous, which makes for rich soil to grow theories and fan discussion just like this. And the title itself is no exception. And I think this perspective in particular can lend itself to the cyclical nature of the stories we've seen thus far. One theory that is just a must-have for a video like this is the theme of cyclicality. The quality or state of something that occurs or moves in cycles. The idea that time and paths are linked in a circle is a profound aspect of Little Nightmares. It has sparked countless conversations and added depth to the game's narrative and character development. This theory suggests that the world and its inhabitants are stuck in loops specific to them. Two obvious examples of this cyclicality are the potential that Six is the lady and Mono is the thin man. But Drew, it's all pretty much laid out in the game. Six is the lady, Mono is the thin man. Not so fast. While the game's narrative does strongly point to Mono being a thin man or the thin man, and Six being the next lady or the lady herself, the brilliant writer of Little Nightmares, Dave Mervick, has never explicitly confirmed either theory. Now, it's hard to shy away from the clues we do have though, like Six's gradual shift toward ruthlessness and indifference, and Mono's ability to manipulate TV signals, transport through them, and literally turning into a thin man before our eyes. Dave wants us to truly believe anything is possible in the nowhere.
Once you've told people that you're not going to tell them everything, but there's going to be stuff in there for them to find out, that's when their perspective changes, and I think that's really important.
What's even cooler is that the theme of cyclicality extends beyond just the characters we play as too. Take the viewers from Little Nightmares 2 who represent addiction and control. They watch any TV they can find with undivided attention, zombie-like, unable to break free from its pull. And they will stay there until they're forced to stop watching or the TV turns off. Even their physical entrapment mirrors their mental enslavement and creates a powerful visual metaphor for that exact cyclical nature of addiction and control. Or take the guests as a reflection of gluttony. It's heavily insinuated that the mall is a self-sustaining ecosystem. The guests shuffle in to stuff themselves with what always seems to be meats, sausages, steaks, etc., and they are at some point herded to the lady, who is a reflection of vanity and power. Combing her long hair, wearing beautiful robes, she's obsessed with staying beautiful. Lucky for her, the lady's power to suck someone's life force out of their body, it does just that. After she does so, these soulless bodies are turned into sausages, steaks, and other meals for the next round of hungry guests to feast on as their own last meal. The horrors of childhood and adulthood are also a key ingredient in what makes Little Nightmares Little Nightmares. It pretty much is the first thing we see when we start the game. 6, small and lost in this big cold metal world, everything is a mystery, and you definitely have more questions than answers. We still do. But then, these horribly disfigured monsters come out of the woodwork to start chasing after her. And yeah, that's terrifying, but think about the other side too. The adults in the nowhere are usually depicted as grotesque and exaggerated caricatures, sometimes wearing masks, sometimes obsessed with their own beauty, and sometimes demanding authority over whoever they have. Each one embodies their own set of vices, fears, or insecurities. Maybe these adults are kids who have grown up in the nowhere and sunken deeper into their self-anointed downfalls. We now know that the ferryman takes kids from our world and escorts them to the nowhere. These kids seem to get little tastes of this world in their own nightmares, and when they finally agree to crossing the threshold, they disappear from our world and can't come back. At least that we know of. But the reason these kids are chosen is why I'm bringing this up. The ferryman seeks out children who have lived sad, confusing, and suffocating lives. Then, he gives them a choice.
He's been with me this whole time. Watching. Observing. Waiting.
What I'm getting at is, maybe these kids who thought it was a good idea to leave their old lives behind grow up in the nowhere, regretting it, and fall deeper into their sadness, only to reflect it back onto the new kids who have recently made the choice to cross over themselves. Have you ever seen a Salvador Dalí painting? Maybe this one. Dalí was at one point in his career something called a surrealist painter. Surrealism can be found in art, movies, and yes, video games. Especially Little Nightmares, if you haven't caught on yet. Basically, surrealism is the expression of an idea through dreamlike imagery, juxtaposition, and most importantly, symbolism. Using objects, characters, or settings as symbols to represent deeper, often hidden meanings. For example, the melting clocks in this painting are symbols for the lack of meaning and fluidity of time in the dream world. Sound familiar? Little Nightmares embodies surrealism through various different ways. The dreamlike environments, peculiar characters, the strange scenarios. The game's world feels both familiar and foreign at the same time, creating an atmosphere that has provided many mysteries for all of us. And really, this painting is a great example because the way the Nowhere's time works is fluid and distorted. The sense of time passing is unclear, and the environments often feel timeless or frozen in a perpetual state. This representation of time is symbolizing the sense of being trapped in a nightmarish reality where time has lost all meaning. It reflects Six's and Mono's endless struggle to escape. The lack of clear progression and the repetition of certain scenarios also highlight themes of stagnation and difficulty of overcoming deep-seated fears and traumas. Ever notice how when you get caught, Six or Mono just wakes up again? And that's just the tip of the iceberg. There are plenty of other examples of symbolism all throughout Little Nightmares. Point one out in the comments. I'm interested to see what you find. Finally, I think the most important takeaway from Little Nightmares is it's about loss of innocence. Again, the first time we see Six is when she wakes up in this huge, strange metal structure, the mall. She's notably smaller than everyone, dressed in a bright yellow raincoat. She's a flicker of hope in this dark world. Heck, she doesn't even have shoes on. She's just a little baby in this big bad world. Her initial actions are primarily driven by survival instincts, escaping from danger, finding food, and navigating the mall's environment. But as Six progresses through the mall, she comes across various adults and monsters, each representing different forms of threat and corruption. These encounters force Six to confront with some brutal realities of her world and ours. And through these actions she has to take against these monsters, we see Six change slowly before our eyes. Maybe even growing up a little. She becomes more desperate for food, and her actions become, let's say, morally ambiguous. And before we know it, she's using the tools she was provided within the world to finally fight back. Dave Mervick brings writing for video games to a new level. He's consistently explained in interviews how his approach to storytelling, especially in Little Nightmares, is a style where he prefers to leave narrative elements open to interpretation, allowing players to make their own conclusions about connections between important characters like Mono and the Thin Man, or Six and the Lady. People make interpretations, and there's nothing worse than when the one responsible comes out and says, "This is what I mean." I don't want to hear what the director was trying to do, other than watch the film that they made, because that's what they're giving to people. Now, I'm sure you have your very own theory about what Little Nightmares is really about. My Discord channel is listed in my bio. Throw your own theories in there, and let's talk about them. And so, that is all from me for today. I want to thank you so much for watching all the way to the very end. Please like, subscribe, notification bell, you know the drill. I will see you next time. Peace!